Good morning, Reverend Sass.
Hello.
Do you like your full title?
Reverend Sass Adams, yes.
Yes.
I'm still getting used to it. It's still very new. Even it's about a year old, but it still feels very new.
Well, it's very exciting. So for anyone who doesn't know Sass and doesn't know me, I met Sass 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah, yeah, actually, yes, it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
About 4 years.
And I was very, very impressed with the presence that Sass holds. So I'm going to slightly embarrass you, because you really do have a remarkable, gentle presence. So when I then heard that you were doing the training to become a reverend, I was secretly really excited, because anyone who has the privilege of being anywhere near you is going to be very restored to a sense of all is well with the world. So that's kind of lovely for me. And
beautiful for you to say. Thank you.
Well,
a little bit.
It's absolutely true. So it's a real pleasure and privilege to have you on this. And just, I think one of the things that maybe we're going to do is we'll discuss the sort of differences and then oddly the similarities between perhaps your training and my sort of clinical work. So, because I'll tell you, Sass, as a kind of interesting sort of beginning. When I started my training, I was actually in a prayer group, and which I loved, and I was very involved with the church, and I definitely won't mention which church it was. And when it got out that I was training in Chinese medicine, I was chucked out, and which was very confusing to me. And there are people out there who definitely believe that the way in which I've been trained is the work of the devil.
Absolutely. That's something I can identify with as well, because where I'm an interfaith minister, I'm not a Christian reverend. I'm judged a lot by certain groups within Christianity, and I don't want to tarnish everybody with that at all, because there are so many other groups that are just welcoming, and they can see the interfaith side of this being the thread that runs through all religions, all cultures. There are those threads, and I think that's what I want to kind of talk to you today about, essentially, are those threads that kind of connect. There are some different, of course there are differences, and that's the beauty of it as far as I'm concerned. But one thing to mention to what you were saying was there was someone on my course who actually came to us from being an Anglican minister, who was still active as an Anglican minister, but was doing the training with us as an interfaith minister as well. He was chucked out for exactly the same reasons. It was, why are you doing this? You can't take two sets of vows. The new vows are contradictory. They weren't contradictory to the vows already taken, but it's this sense of, I suppose the interfaith is very personal. It's looking at our own story and our own spiritual journey. And for a lot of people, health came up a lot within that spiritual journey, which again, why I want to talk to you today, really, is kind of that relationship between the East, the West, the physical, the mental, the spiritual, everything, and how it kind of relates to each other. And as I say, like before we hit record, I was just saying, I don't have a question. I don't have that question mark of please answer this, because I don't think there are there's one answer to anything.
No.
I think it's very much a very personal response, I think, is what I'm asking for, is can you talk to, here's a question then, can you talk to the relationship between Eastern spirituality, Western spirituality, and maybe where health comes into this, physical health. That's huge. That's a huge question.
Yes, but it is my favourite subject. Anyone who's listening to this, I haven't paid Sass to ask me my favourite topic or discuss it. Okay, so this does happen to be seriously my favourite topic, because my ancestry is quite interesting. I mean, I think everyone's is, but so my great grandfather was Dean of Westminster, and my when Prince Charles became King Charles, they were all walking over my great grandfather's plaque, and apparently he was a terrifying man and not terribly nice, apparently. And then my grandfather was Dean of Cape Town in South Africa, and my father was brought up in South Africa. And his father, so my grandfather, all my childhood was stories of my grandparents' work, of what I sort of got to understand from Daddy, work around a living faith. And their living faith was getting children out of the prisons and building schools that are still there today, and creating refuge for Black pregnant single women, and feeding people, but on a mind, body and spirit level. And so I was brought up with the idea that prayer is not it's not, how would I say this? Prayer is so multidimensional. So it's sort of fashionable now to talk about your mind or meditation. But prayer can, I think, appear to be quite a dirty word, and people don't know what you mean. And if you combine that with I spent a lot of time thinking about this. So early Christianity was call the way. I don't know whether you know that. And Taoism, that I've been trained in, the philosophy of Taoism, is call the way. So the way that I've understood now religions, philosophies, beliefs, is they all have truth within them, which comes down to loving each other, not necessarily liking each other, but loving. And what does love actually mean? So my understanding now of our health, integrated health, is really simple. And what I'm just about to say is definitely not my expression, but it's lovely. You know, the experiences, living our lives and experiencing any experiences, is like the currency of eternity. So if you happen to believe, which I do because I've had these extraordinary experiences, that I am not my physicality, I'm actually something that has had a before and is going to have an after, but not in ways that I claim to understand. I mean, I've experienced leaving my body. I've experienced leaving this physicality. I've experienced deciding whether I'm going to come back into this jacket. So it could be purple or green or whatever, but and I've come into a jacket that's white this time, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. But
I think and my experience has shown me this is true, that our health is our health in our mind, in our body, and our spirit is deeply, deeply affected by how are we doing and how are we being as a loving human being. So when yesterday, I needed to pray for the courage to tell someone who I really admire and love deeply that it wasn't the disease that they have been diagnosed with, which is a terrifying disease, that was killing them. It was their anger that was killing them. And because I was gifted by grace in that moment, and I managed to say it lovingly enough, they actually said, I believe you're telling me the truth, and I think you're right. And I know they're going to go away and think about it. Because they can outwit the prognosis that they've been given. They've already done it by 7 years, when they were supposed to live 7 months. And they can continue, I believe, to outwit the prognosis if they keep dropping to their knees humbly and find peace, which is not easy. I mean, we're all human beings that need to feel our emotions. We need to be emotionally healthy, but we need to make sure we don't get stuck. So
I was going to say, can I ask, in those moments of desperation almost, how would you personally find that peace? Would that be a more Western way, or what I would call the Western spirituality way of trying to find the peace, or something that would go along the more Eastern path with the Taoism? Or would it be combined?
I think, Sass, for me, it's combined. I mean, the key for me is that I believe we're all energy beings. So I never share anything outwardly that hasn't actually worked for me. Being a practitioner is not useful to another human being, actually. It doesn't. It's what's useful to another human being is if I can be living something that is different. So if I'm living unhappily, then that's what I'm transmitting. My energy is transmitting. So there are moments when I absolutely, I mean, an hour before this call, I had to make a very nasty call to do with a whiplash injury and that I have, and it almost certainly looks as if I'm going to have even more surgery. And I just hit that very human moment of I cannot fill in another form. I could feel myself. I was just going, I can't do it. And tears were welling in my eyes, and I was going, maybe I need to cancel Sass. I don't, and I was all over the place. But what I very quickly knew, only through the habit of it, is if I wasn't responding like that, then I'm not truly alive. I can't. It's appropriate that I have. I'm not superhuman. I rely on a belief system that really works for me. And the belief system says to me through experience that I'm an energy being, and sometimes you get just the energy just goes, ugh, and that's okay. So if you and I went for a walk in nature and we went along a river and we did the same river through the seasons, there are some times when the river just goes round way down, there's no water, and it's all just mud and glunky. Well, our lives get like that. And just an hour ago, I was going, I'm cancelling everything. I can't handle it. No, you don't need to be talking to a practitioner that's pretending she's got her life together. You know what I mean? You need a human being. And if I've got the capacity to hold myself steady, then sure as eggs are eggs, someone's going to come into my life, maybe today, tomorrow, she's going to go, I'm in absolute despair, what do I do? And I can go, well, maybe do what I did, which is I just had a moment and I went, yes, of course you are. Get your shoulders back down, it's all right. And if you really need to cancel Sass, you'll cancel Sass. But actually, 10 minutes later, I was going, no, of course I don't. I'm looking forward to it. I want it.
It's been a while.
Yeah. So
Very
I think
human reaction, yeah.
I think it's a combination.
Yeah.
And it's peace is a movable feast.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And also, which nobody ever told me this, and I love the fact that I can just say it like this. I'm quite a literal person, and nobody ever told me that asking for what you then can receive, in the asking is already requiring me to do something. So I thought asking and receiving was basically going, okay, come on, I want 50,000 books to be sold. And then sort of sitting there, kind of going, because I do actually believe in miracles and magic. And in some ways, I think it actually can just be that simple. But I also love the fact that if I'm asking, then that asking actually requires for me to go, and thank you very much that it already is so. And please, could you just give me some tips about what I need to do to participate in that?
Be
Now,
part of the miracle.
yeah, because the reason why that's so important is that peace, I want to be a peaceful person. Now, if I'm really serious about wanting to be a peaceful person, what is going to happen? Everything but peace is going to come at me. I didn't realize that. It's the law of opposites. So now I go, oh, yes, okay, this is great. I now need to be peaceful when everyone else isn't. Oh, okay. I can choose. That's amazing. So how do you download your peace, as it were?
How do I download it? In a very similar way, actually. It took me quite a long time, without going into like life story, that there's a lot of trauma in the background, as it were, which has shown up in various ways. And it took a lot for me to realize that it's possible for me to help myself through it. Not having money for therapists, all the rest of it, I started to really kind of take on a self-healing journey, which I'm still on. I always will be on, and I'm very okay with that. I'm constantly learning new things. But the big moment was, funnily enough, when I realized the importance of human reaction and human emotion and not trying to cover it up.
Yeah.
So I spent so much time being ashamed of that emotion and ashamed of anger and ashamed of tears. I spent most of my court when I was training to be a minister. I spent most of it in tears in front of other people, which was shameful, absolutely shameful to me. But what I realized was every drop of water coming from my face was healing, every single one. And anytime I get that lump in my throat, for whatever reason, I know even if I don't know why, doesn't matter if I can't think of why in that moment, my spirit knows why. My spirit has been touched. My spirit needs to cry. So it happens. If I feel anger, not that I don't have to explode with anger. I can temper that anger, but I can acknowledge the anger, because for me, that's a warning sign that something's not right. So I need to kind of sit down and work out what isn't right. What do I need to do about it? How do I address this situation? So I get just as angry as anybody else. It's just that I know that I can temper that anger.
Yeah.
And I suppose in those moments where I need to find the peace within all of the emotion, it's my vow now. And the vow is it was something we work on for ourselves. It's our own. We write our own words. It's a vow to ourselves, to spirit, that we have developed for us. It's very individual, and my vow is very individual to me. And there is peace within it. Just a few words, just a couple of words, reminds me of my connection to spirit, or whatever word you want to use for the divine. I believe it's very much the same thing, whether it's God, spirit, anything. and calling those words, saying those words in my head or out loud, it's almost trained my body to relax, and it's trained my mind.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the mantra, the way the mantras work, the way affirmations work, the way prayer works. There's a very personal prayer, the way magic spells work for me. You know, for me, it's all the same thing, and it just brings that moment of peace and stillness, and it will last however long it needs to last, and then I can start to look at the next steps. What is it that I now need to do? Or do I need to remain in peace? You know, in which case I'll sit down for longer, like an hour or so, just in complete stillness.
Yes, because you know, these courses that I build, we go through the seasons, and you know, anger is something that women in particular are very frightened of. And you know, this man that I talked with yesterday, he has every right. It's normal and appropriate that he would be as angry as he is, but he still is going to have to dismantle that anger, because underneath the anger are more gifts of his own potential to live and thrive.
Absolutely.
So
we're not taught how to deal with anger, are we?
Yeah.
You know, the society, my experience of the society I live in is that anger is shameful.
Yeah.
Therefore, we don't talk about it. And so people don't know how to regulate themselves. So we see the anger coming out in horrible, horrible ways, and then the shame is put on the whole shame about anger habit. Is this horrible cycle. We're just not taught how to deal with our emotions. Maybe we're British. Maybe that's what it is. Our repression of ourselves.
Well, I mean, this morning I was in the car and I made a mistake. I did not put, it was my mistake, I did not put the indicator out because I didn't see any cars. And I remember thinking there are no cars, so I'm going to turn into this place. And but there was a woman there, and she started screaming at me. And she was absolutely out of control. And all I could think to myself, only because I was feeling peaceful in that moment, I thought to myself, my goodness, I'm going to think about you all day, and I'm going to send you love and prayers, because there's something going on.
Yeah.
I've made a mistake. Now, I didn't feel shame, but I used to.
Yes.
And I think that what's so tragic is that being a human being fully is almost, we're almost being educated to believe that being perfect over here, like an alien, or I don't know whether aliens are perfect, I don't know, but anyway, being something that's perfect is in a box over here, which we've all got to try and do.
Yeah.
And actually being human, we've got to put aside. And you know, if you just think of this term, which is not mine, you know, all experiences are the currency of eternity, whatever that might mean to you. What is it about me that won't let other people have their experiences? Why am I so controlling as a human being? Why can't I be, I mean, one of the toughest lessons I was ever taught, my mother, because of this disease, self-medicated. So she became an absolute raging alcoholic and drug addict. And during my childhood, I constantly would find her on the floor. And, you know, as a child, you try to drag your mother upstairs up to bed. I mean, no wonder I've got a bad back, actually. I'm not blaming her. No, I'm not. I already had it. But anyway, it was a normal and natural response and reaction. I loved my mother and I wanted to do something about her because I knew instinctively she was ill. I knew she wasn't the drunk that society began to know her to be at some point in her life. And then this wonderful, wonderful person came to me and said, your mother has an illness. They didn't know she had an illness on top of other illnesses. And the only reason why she had the illness of alcoholism was because of the underlying issues.
Mm.
And this wonderful person said to me, this is going to be the toughest thing you're ever going to learn to do, but I'm going to ask you to be willing to learn it. I'm going to play this straight with you, because you're being forced into being an adult too early on in your life. And there's nothing I can do about that, but to withdraw information that you need is not okay. So they said, there is a chance that if you leave your mother, she's going to vomit and she's going to drown in her own vomit. Very gory, nasty stuff. And I tell this story because I know damn well there's so many people out there who have these situations. It doesn't matter, mother, father, lover, brother, sister, husband, it doesn't. And they carried on and they went, you still have to leave them where they are. Because when they wake up sober, they will maybe have sick around them. They'll be disorientated. They'll wonder where they are and why they're there. And every single time they wake up like that, there is a greater and greater chance that the denial that is the greatest symptom of alcoholism will actually be penetrated, and they will seek help. Whereas if you enable, which is what you're doing, the sickness, it's just going to get worse and worse, but with the denial getting worse and worse. And I just, for a long, long time, I still couldn't do it. I could, And they were really clever with me, because they said, listen, if you want to sit beside them, because they're not bad. Alcoholism is not someone waking up in the morning and deciding to be an absolute whatever. Alcoholism is a horrible disease where you're out of control. And the only way you can really help is to allow them to have the experience of alcoholism. Don't go and hide the bottles. I mean, I was watering down my mother's vodka bottles. I did everything to try and stop her, until I learned to stop trying to stop her. And I just needed to concentrate on loving her and accepting her.
How she is. It's a very difficult thing. One concept we were taught very, very early on, which weirdly enough I've never come across before, was the simple idea that we are perfect. No matter what is going on in your life, you're perfect the way you are human. You're made exactly how you were meant to be made. And when you first come across this concept, you're just like, but what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this scenario? What about this scenario? Doesn't matter. It's hard to look at everybody as perfect, especially when, without mentioning certain things, but I'm sure you can think of all of the reasons why someone isn't perfect. How can you see that person as perfect? And actually, it didn't take very long for me to kind of wrap my brain around this and start to realize that even the people who we immediately judge, for whatever reason, there's a reason they've done that. There's a reason in their background that they've done that. They've still been made perfect.
Yeah.
They've acted as a human. And as a minister, as someone who wants to relate to people, it's my job to speak to that person, no matter, and to approach them and to understand them as being perfect. Every single person. And all of a sudden, like, judgment fell. It fell away. And that was a massive turning point in my life personally, is that realization that I'm perfect. That was huge. That was huge. And it's hard to remember, admittedly, in those moments where you are screaming and shouting for whatever reason, and then to go, oh no, it's okay, I'm perfect. It sounds egotistical, but that's not the understanding of that from Spirit's point of view. It doesn't matter what we've done.
No.
It's an experience.
Yeah. I guess that, I do a lot of work with people kind of going back to allowing them to experience innocence, which I think is probably similar. Because judgment, going back to health, most of us, I contributed hugely to how high the pain levels would get in my body because I judged myself so harshly. Judgment became one of my major problems. I wasn't good enough.
You're not dealing with things well enough. You see someone else who has the same issues and they can deal with things as if nothing's happening. So you're judging yourself and being too weak, or I say yourself, I don't mean you, I just in general, like I know I do this with myself. Without, again, not going into issues, you see someone who's doing so well, and there's the immediate judgment on myself for not being good enough, which makes everything worse, because negative talk, going back to what you were saying, you're putting out that energy. And I'm listening to my own energy. Once I'm in that negative cycle, that's what happens. I just go down and down and down until I can finally see, I wake up next to the bottles, as it were, and know I need to help myself again.
It's so this incredible journey that we can go on it's an adventure. It's never ending. And we can give each other permission to be content and peaceful inside ourselves, and it's no longer conditional on, have I got a boyfriend? Have I got £1,000 spare in my bank account? Have I got the right, I don't know, body, shoes, how, lipstick, friends? None of this outside stuff actually matters. What matters is our relationship with ourselves. And if we're our own best friend, in my case, like you, I use the word divine. I believe that grace is something that can be downloaded and accessed. My spirit knows grace, but I don't necessarily remember that my spirit knows grace. So I kind of almost have to flick the switch and go, Catherine, you're innocent and you can download grace. So I don't have to know everything. There's this dreadful culture now where you have to know everything. The kind of circumstance I deal with, how could you possibly, Sass? I don't want to be this know-all. I want to keep learning, but I don't. I go into situations and I go, okay, divine heavenly energy, can you give me, what do I do? And most of the time it's not doing, it's being.
I'd say that I'm quite a curious person, but within that curiosity, so I've been studying religion from the get-go, pretty much from a very, very early age through university, blah, 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 blah. But there's a definite point where I realised, when going away from academia and more into my own kind of spiritual journey, I realised that I'm happy to not know that much. I'm happy just to, part of my vow that I was talking about earlier, it's surrender. It's simply surrender, and I don't have to know. I can just go with the flow almost. I don't have to know the words for the right words to say. I don't need to know the right pathway to go down. Just surrender. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I will be led if I connect. In your words, download. In other words, it'd be Holy Spirit. In other words, it might be something completely different. But for me, again, it's the same thread of connection. For me, it's all about that connection.
Yeah. And Sass, talking about connecting,
Yes.
I'm very sorry. I've got to let someone into a electric gate because I'm babysitting a house, and so and that's
We have
what
gone
the
on a bit.
interruption was. So Sass, please, let's do this again.
Absolutely. I can
And
talk about this forever. Maybe not a good thing.
you're everyone that you're going to go near is going to be really touched.
Thank you.
I don't think we're allowed to. I don't think we're allowed to think how much our presence can become part of what we all contribute to each other.
Yes.
And it can come from that knowledge of we're perfect and we're innocent. And so we can let it go a bit more. But anyway, I better let someone into the gate.
Yes.
Take huge care and see you very
Thank you.
soon.
Hopefully. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks, Sass.